The whole story of Holy Week starts back at the Passover meal, actually. I'm not going to go through the steps of the Passover meal, but if you read the Genesis and read what Moses went through with the Passover, you'll find very relevant stories to what's happening now with Christ. The New Testament completes the Old Testament, okay? And so there are things that overlap. The word, just for example, the word Easter is not in our vocabulary, the Greek vocabulary. The word that we use is Pascha. You'll hear Pascha in church all week. You'll hear Father use the word Pascha. Pascha literally means Passover. Okay, so we celebrate actually Passover, but it's the new Passover. Okay, Christ is the new Passover. And that's why we have this variance of dates sometimes, like a whole month after the Catholic, the Western Easter. It's because our formula states that's got to be, Easter has to fall on after the first full moon, after the vernal equinox, provided that Passover has been completed. Okay? And the reason is that we cannot celebrate the new Passover with the people who crucified Christ. And so that's why they changed. That's why we had the big difference. If it falls on the same time or out of chronological order, then we have to wait till the next full moon. And that's what happened this year. Okay, and that's why there's such a variance. Of course, you should be all excited about that because we get our Easter eggs cheaper, and we get our clothes cheaper. You guys aren't going to be able to see the TV well. You want to come up here somewhere? You know,
I can see it.
Okay. All right, so I'm not going to go through the whole story here because it'll just take too long to go through all of it. We're going to start here. This is after Christ was baptized by John the Baptist. And he goes out into Jericho. That's the city of Jericho that you're looking out at. And this is on a mountain cliff right outside Jericho. That's where the cave is, and that's where he went and where he was tempted by Satan. And the only reason I show this is, first of all, it starts the ministry of Christ. And it also foretells a few things there because Satan, you can see him talking to Christ, and what he says to Christ is, if you are the Son of God, you'll take this rock and make it bread. All right, he says it a couple times, if you are the Son of God. And Luke writes at the end of that passage, he says, the devil, Satan, then left for a little while. And we don't see him come back. We see devils as his legions, but we don't see Satan come back until the crucifixion. And he does come back at that point. So when I point that out, that's why I'm giving you a heads up on that one, okay? So, okay, there's the scriptural reference. Like, in your collection are all the scriptural references that I cover here, in case there's one that you want to look up later. All right. I love going over this part. I don't know why. I'm a map fanatic and picture fanatic, as you can see down here. This is the old city of Jerusalem, all right, as it was back then. We're going to start with Lazarus, the story of Lazarus, and that's in Bethany. That's out in this area here. Down here, for those who can see this, like George says he can see it back there, there's Bethany back there. That's 2 miles outside of Jerusalem. Okay, so what you're seeing here, this is the old city of Jerusalem without the new parts behind it, and that's what this has the new New Jerusalem's behind it there. But here's the wall. Okay, goes from here. We're going to be talking about the Temple of Herod, which is right here. But that's that's the mosque that was built in the 5th century over there, and that's what's there now. Still the mosque, a Muslim mosque. Right there, you see that's the gate that Christ entered on Palm Sunday. So when we go to Palm Sunday, that's where it is. And he started out here, probably in this area, because right here is the garden at Gethsemane. Notice I said the garden at Gethsemane. It's not the Garden of Gethsemane. That's a misnomer. It's the garden in Gethsemane. Okay, Gethsemane is the name of the garden. All right, so name it the Garden of Gethsemane is just, it's just something that developed through the years. Gethsemane means oil press. So it's full of olive oil trees, which you'll see shortly. All right, the reason I show you these pictures, this was taken in the late 1800s. this collection here. And there's 3 separate pictures that I've lumped together. And I just love it because it gets us close to the feeling. And that's what I'm going to be pushing at. Hopefully I can get you to feel the presence, of the time and everything. So you can really feel this program. That's what I'm attempting to do, and that's why I show you these things. But you can see it's broken down to different quarters. Today, this is the Jewish quarter. This is the Christian quarter. This is the Muslim quarter. Okay? Back here is the Last Supper. When we get to the Last Supper, it was right here. And right over here is the house of Caiaphas. You'll become familiar with that when we get into this. Here is where the temple of Herod was. This temple here was right there. Like I said, it leads right up to the gate. When Christ entered on Palm Sunday, he enters here and goes up into the old temple of Herod, which was destroyed in 70 AD. Okay, yeah, you'll have 2 pictures there. The lighter one is the one that reflects the picture that's on the screen. The darker one is the reverse, is the other side. All right, so you almost have to turn it upside down to get the right not chronological, but the right look at it, perspective. Okay, so this is, if you can see this tower here, that is called the Antonio. That is where Pilate resided. There's a big building here. Herod the Great built that for his friend Antony of Antony and Cleopatra fame. Richard Burton, remember Antony and Cleopatra? Okay. So they were good friends. So he built this place for him, and that's where all the Romans legions with the Pilate and everything, that's where they would reside. It was like a palace there. It's called the Antonio. And this is where Christ will be tried, right here. And right there, 2 domes. I don't know if you can see them. I can barely see them. But that's where the crucifixion was. And you could see it on the light chart you have. There it is right back there. That's Calvary right there. And in this picture, it's right here in the Greek section, the Christian section now, right in there. So when Christ has to carry his cross, he goes from here all the way through the town, all the way out to here. So it's a good mile of traveling. So it was quite a journey for Christ. Okay, I think that's everything I want to cover with you. This is the old city of David out here, what they're showing. And that's right here on this one. The old city of David. David never got to when he brought the bones of Joseph, he never got to the temple spot. God wouldn't let him go there because he had sinned against God so badly with some of the things that he did. So he carried the tabernacle up to this point here. And he built his city there, and it's called the city of David. And they're excavating it now down there. They're finding some incredible things. On our last trip there was a lot of excavating going there. The Wailing Walls right here. This is the Wailing Wall right back there. So the city of David, it was his son, Solomon, who took the Ark of the Covenant, took it from there and built a temple here, which Herod actually built, and put the Ark of the Covenant here at this spot. And then, like I say, in 70 AD, it was burnt down by the Romans. And the Muslims in the 5th century built their temple, their mosque there. Okay. This is another mosque that's on the same, from the Muslim mosque. So there's 2 up there. Now they're still there. All right, so that's just a reflection of the old city, and then there's a new city, which you have here in front of you. Okay, well, I think we've had enough of the city. We're going to go past this part. All right, we're going to start on Saturday, the Saturday of Lazarus, because it really starts with Saturday. All right. This is actually the Tomb of Lazarus, and the treat I have for you today is I'm going to take you down to the tomb. We're going to walk through there and actually go down. We got a live video. It's not live, but I was alive when I filmed it, so I consider it live. So we're going to go down there in a second. Let me just give a little background first. I'll show you a couple slides. This is in Bethany. When you read the scriptures that you heard yesterday, you can see that it's a small entrance. It's not made for public thoroughfare. And a stone was always put over it to cover the entrance because the animals would go in there and eat the bodies. Okay? We're going to talk about animals a little bit later. So let me take you into this part first. And there's the exit right there that I just showed you. You come down the steps. In those days, they buried on different levels. Okay, so there's 2 levels there. And unfortunately, Lazarus is at the bottom level. And that goes down there. See, there's the hole for the bottom level. It's a 4x4 space. So I had to crawl in there. So, I mean, it's small, very claustrophobic. And there's the, again, once you get down to that level I just showed you, you got another level. You got to sneak in. It gets even worse in here. All right, Brian, let's take them in now. This is a very quick thing, so you got to watch. But we're starting from here. Brian told me it would take a couple seconds here. There it is. Now the bishop is with us. Can you imagine him crawling into these small spaces there? But he's chanting the Apollotikion that we sang today and yesterday for Dina Nasta Senior. He's chanting that behind us as we're going in there. And there's the one of the levels, but we still got to go down another level. We'll make a left here. Chris Pappas is the one who actually filmed this while we were walking down there. And there's the final level. Sneaking underneath there. Boy, it was really claustrophobic. And we're there now. So there you are. You're in the tomb of Lazarus. And yesterday you got to venerate the relics, and now you can see the tomb. You got the complete story here.
When was this, Gerry?
This was at our last trip to Jerusalem 2 years ago. So, okay, Brian. I think they got it. All right. So when you talk to your friends and they ask you, what did you do this weekend? Oh, well, we took a trip down to the Tomb of Lazarus. Okay, so we can move ahead, right, Brian? I can go ahead?
Just 1 sec.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move on now. Christ is with his disciples in Bethany, outside of Bethany, and Mary and Martha, the sisters of Lazarus, sent a note to Christ that Lazarus is sick, and that he'd come and help him. Lazarus was the financier he was very wealthy, and he took care of Christ and the disciples. They had to eat, they had to stay at places, so they needed money. In fact, Judas was the treasurer. A lot of people don't realize that. Judas was the treasurer. He was a thief, too. John says he was a thief when he was made the treasurer. Anyhow, being out there and getting the word that his friend Lazarus was dying and needed his help, Christ waited 4 days. Now, I don't know if you ever thought about that. Why did he wait 4 days? He should, like I say, Lazarus was probably his best friend outside of his disciple groups. I mean, if he had a friend, it would have been Lazarus and the family, because they took care of him. So he waited 4 days, and then he gets note that Lazarus died. So Christ, after 4 days, says to the disciples, okay, let's go now. And they say, yeah, why are we going now? The disciples are at a complete loss as to Christ, understanding him. All these years that he's been teaching them, even to this point now, 3 years, they still don't understand Christ, even though they think they do. They say they do. But if they understood who Christ was, they would have been with him at the crucifixion, or close by at least, or come and seen him. They were running away, scattering and hiding. Only one was at the crucifixion, John. So why did he wait 4 days? Because in those days, they didn't embalm people. The Jews didn't do that. And they were ending up burying people that were alive. So they would wait 4 days to make sure the person was dead. And Christ wanted to make sure that everybody understood that Lazarus was dead. Okay. So they get to this part. This is the two icons of it, and this is the tomb. And you went to the tomb, so you know what it looks like now. And when he approaches Bethany, Martha runs out to greet him. and says, Lord, and she gets down, she kisses him, she hugs his feet and everything. And Christ says, well, where's Mary? And Martha says, well, she's a little upset at you. She's in the kitchen, but she didn't want to come out to greet you because she's upset. And he said, okay, I'll go to her. Christ is going to be teaching us every day of the way a different theme. He realizes his time is at an end now, and he wants to teach. And so he's going about teaching us a different thing every day almost. And in this case, I find this very touching in that, he's God. He's the human being now. It's the second nature is here, but he's still God. And he goes to Mary, even though she wanted no parts of him. And he goes there, and then she breaks down and starts crying and starts weeping and hugging him and asking forgiveness and everything. And she says that if you had to only come, you could have saved him. And then Christ does something else. I find that very humble, what Christ did at that point. And that's his greatest teaching element, humility. He's going to show it throughout this week. But Mary, I lost my train of thought here. So Christ does something very, very heartwarming, I think. In listening to Mary, he starts crying. Now here's this. Put yourself in the place there. Here's Christ, who knows what he's going to do now. He's going to resurrect Lazarus, right? But he cries. Okay? He knows it's going to be a happy moment soon. He still cries because he was touched by the empathy from Mary and Martha. He was touched that they kept saying he was your friend and you failed him. You didn't come to help him. And he cries. Christ cries. I just think it's a very touching moment in that story. Then Christ goes to the front of the tomb. And the main point that I'm trying to communicate here, other than the themes that he was trying to communicate to us, is that Christ is attracting the gathering because the Pharisees, the head the theological group, are trying to get rid of him. All right. So they watch everything he does so that he makes a mistake, and then they're going to nail him on it. Pardon the pun, but they will. You understand what I'm saying? So they're real careful, and they have a lot of spies out, and they had a lot of people at this point there, looking at seeing what Christ is going to do here. They heard he was coming to Bethany, and then Christ teaches another thing that he'll do several times. He says, "Take me to the cave," and they go to this spot here, or the spot that I showed you. And he says, remove the stone. And they don't want to do it. They said, he's going to stink. He's been down there 4 days. It's going to smell. And, Christ says, remove the stone. And then he prays to his Father. Okay, now, again, he's God. All right, he knows what he's going to do, and yet he prays. He's teaching us, before anything. That's, we pray, for any important event or whatever, the start of anything. Like we started our class, we pray first for God's intervention. We pray for God's intervention. And it must have been, it's one of the things I would love to have seen, the movies do a great job on it, I think, some of them, but just to see that event where he says, Lazarus. The Bible says he says it twice. He says, Lazarus, come forward. And now he comes. Can you imagine the reaction of the spies that were there, the Pharisees? Can you imagine that? I mean, I can just see them. Oh my God, it's real. What are we going to do? He can bring people back from the dead. My goodness. So people start scattering actually. The Pharisees, the spies went to the Pharisees to tell them, hey, this is the real thing. You got to be careful. I mean, he had a whole group out there, and he raised Lazarus from the dead. So word gets back to the Pharisees, okay? So the Pharisees are now convinced that with this event, they have to eliminate Christ. That is their thought, that, this is not going to work with having him there. Their job security, I guess, was at risk, and they just took that approach on that. So this starts, by the way, poor Lazarus had to die twice. He had to leave because they put out a bounty on him too. They said they can't have him walking around and showing people that he resurrected from the dead. So we got to kill Lazarus and we got to kill Christ. Okay. And so Lazarus leaves. He ended up in Cyprus and became Bishop of Cyprus. And it's Saint Lazarus. And You can get a lot of stories on the internet on him, but that's where he died. His remains were moved, his relics were moved to Constantinople on October 17th, 891. Okay, so let's move on from here. Okay, now we're on Palm Sunday. So Christ now is about here. This is a valley in here. I don't know, you can't tell really here. But this goes down and then comes up into the garden area right here. So Christ probably would have been standing here, and I have a slide of that. That's the actual gate that I'm showing here that Christ entered. That is called the Golden Gate, although I've read recently that the Golden Gate was actually on the other side. Whatever side it was, this is the side that Christ entered to go into Jerusalem on Palm today, when we celebrated today. This is what we celebrated. The entry is sealed off because the Muslims wanted to make sure that the Christ, the Messiah that they were waiting for, everybody was waiting for, it didn't come through. So they thought they'd seal the gate because the prophecy said it would go through those gates. And that's why you see it sealed there, okay? All right, let me find, we're going to talk about the Wednesday in a minute. This is the house of Caiaphas. Caiaphas is the son-in-law of Annas. Annas was the one you heard when I did the presentation here on Christmas. I talked about, he made Mary and Joseph take hemlock because Mary was pregnant and had no husband. You know, they had to go through a test. Obviously they survived, thank God. But now he's an older man now, so his son-in-law, Caiaphas, is the one who's the head theological person there. He's the head priest. So when I refer to the high priest, it's Caiaphas, okay? But you're going to see more of Annas in here. So this was their house, and it was right over here in this area, okay? Right across the street almost from the Last Supper, okay? And on Wednesday, Judas goes here to offer Christ to them. He said, I can lead you to Christ. And then negotiate the 30 pieces of silver and everything. And he said that there's going to be a Passover meal coming. And after that, he usually goes to this prayer place. He likes to pray, garden at Gethsemane. So, when I have more details, I'll get back to you. So they make their arrangements there. And that's why on Wednesday we fast. And Fridays, of course, is because of the crucifixion. So this event that happened here is why we fast on Wednesdays. Okay, all right. Now on Thursday, we go to the upper room, and you're looking at the upper room. There's the spot where the Last Supper was. This is the building outside, looking outside, and the Last Supper is up here in this room up top here. The reason it was upstairs is going back to the animals now. You're going to see pictures of Jerusalem. You can see it's all alleyways and everything. That's what every street looks like. It's all dirt to this day. That's what I took that picture. All right, that's what it looks like, Jerusalem. It's not the major highways. New Jerusalem is, but the old city is like that. Like you see it there. So where were the chickens? Where were the cows? They were living off of them, the milk and the eggs and everything. Well, they were on the first floor. All right, cows can't climb steps. So the animals, the first floor was a barn. All right, and the upper room is where everybody lived. And we were in this room. It's been fixed up, okay? I wish they had left it like it was, but it was all crumbled down, Anyhow, this is where the Last Supper was. My neighbor is James Tabor. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's he's the head of the theology department at UNCC here. And he's my next door neighbor. And he is digging up another place that he believes was the place where Mark had the Last Supper. This place is the house of Mark. Mark, the disciple writer, okay? Christ tells his Peter and John and James, he said, I want you to go into the town and you'll find a man carrying a jug of water from this well. And when you see him, go to that man and tell him the master wants to have supper, Passover supper at your house. And they do. They find somebody with a jug, a male. All the other people were female. Females went down to get the water. That's why he stood out. And he told them that the master wants to have to separate your house. So he said, sure. Now, so they set it for Thursday. That was not Passover day, okay? Obviously, Christ knows he's not going to be here on Saturday for Passover or Friday. So that's why he sets it up for Thursday. And Mark now becomes the eyewitness to a lot of these events. So if you want the eyewitness events, read the book of Mark. And, one of the things I encourage you all to do, it's really interesting, is read the gospel parts in all four of them, because you have to read all four because they all have different pieces. And that's what I've tried to do, is get the pieces together into a story, because they all have different comments on it. But it's very interesting. And Mark was the eyewitness there to these events. So this is where the Last Supper was. And let me show you some things about the Last Supper here. Okay. It was not like this, okay, like Da Vinci's painting there. All right. That's what the Last Supper looked like right there. And it was a Greek style of eating, with royalty and everything. They sat in a U-shaped area. The main person, like Christ, would have been here. And then the executive officer would have been right to his right, which right here is Peter. And then the financier would have been on the other side. That would have been Judas. But Judas wasn't there, right? You know where Judas was at that point. He was out making arrangements. So that seat was empty at the Last Supper. And what happened was John comes in, and he was the youngest of all the disciples. He was 21. He was the young kid, and Christ loved him as a younger brother. And all the disciples liked him as the little kid liked. And he tells us that. If you read the book of John, you'll see he said the one that Christ loved the most. He mentions that several times in his writings. He grabs this seat. Now Judas comes, can't find a place to sit, except down here at the end. So Judas sits here. Okay, and you'll see it in a lot of the artwork that he's at the end. Even in this one, he's at the end here. But it was not clear across like that. This is the way they sat. And let me show you this next picture. Where is it? Oh, maybe I don't have that. I thought I had. Maybe that's one I got rid of. They reclined. These are couches, so they're reclining. You can see it here. See how they're reclining? Mm-hmm. And that's how they sat at the Last Supper. All right. So when we get to Thursday, this is the picture you have in mind, all right, for the Last Supper. All right. And then Christ does say he does announce, it says, one of you is going to betray me. And logic, at least I think, you can disagree with this, that he must have said it softly, all right? Because he says, what happens next is Peter, who's sitting on one side, sees John, who has his head on Christ's chest. He's like a loving, he's leaning on Christ, the scriptures tell us. So Peter leans back, says, hey, ask him who it is. Since you're right there in front of him, ask him who it is. And he says that Christ says to Peter, he says, I'm going to take the bread and watch. I'm going to dip it in the water here. The one who dips his bread in with me is the one that's going to betray me. Now, if you were the one who's going to betray him, would you have dipped your bread in the water if you heard that? It was a big announcement. Now, one of the scriptures, I think it was John, says that the disciples did hear because they responded by saying, who is it? But I think what it was the reference to Peter, because Peter is the one who questioned. And Christ does take the bread, dips it, and Judas does the same. And then Christ tells him, go do what you have to do quickly. In other words, get out of here and go do what you're planning to do. And he leaves. Judas leaves. And it wasn't unusual for the disciples to see that because he was what? He was the financier. So he could have been going to pay the bill. It wasn't illogical that he would get up and leave for any reason. So it didn't impress anybody. But you know why he left now, and that's the Last Supper set up. So interesting here again are the little things that Christ does. At the end of the Last Supper, now he's down to a couple of days, so he's really outpouring his teaching. All right, he's getting all the ministry that he tried to communicate. He's getting it out quickly now. At the end of the Last Supper, he led everybody in a hymn. Okay, knowing that he's going to go through the worst torture, and you're going to see the torture. I mean, it's horrible fate that he's going to go through. He still takes the time to sing a hymn to God. And I always get touched when I hear that, when I that read. It's one of those little things, that's where it is. Mark 14:26, it's the only place that mentions it. And if you read it quickly, you'll miss it. It's just a little thing that I just love. It always touches me. And then we're going to talk about the unanswered prayer, and then a word you've probably never heard of before, unless somebody from the class remembers. Imediatosis. Okay, we're going to go over that pretty soon now. So now we're going to get to the garden. I should have at Gethsemane. Forgive me. This is what it looks like. It's about the size of where we are here. It's not, it's not a big acres and acres of land. It's very small. As a matter of fact, I got a better picture for you. There you go. That's actually it. So let's just say, all right, we're right here right now. I'm standing right here, okay, in proximity, okay? So I'm looking at the Garden of Gethsemane. And he tells his disciples, sit here, pray, and watch, okay? And they said, watch for what? They just had a big celebration. To them, the Passover meal was a celebration. They're all excited. But they stay, and then he says, Peter, James, and John, you come with me. And he goes deeper. He says, you guys stay here now, all right? And again, he says the same thing, pray and watch. And he goes a little bit deeper into this spot where there's this huge rock there, and I'll show you that rock too in a minute. And he does his prayer. And this prayer, he prays to God to take the cup away from him. You all know that one prayer. Do you ever think about it? What if God answered the prayer? We say God answers all prayers. What if God answered the prayer? Okay, we'd have no salvation. All right? Fortunately, Christ immediately says, the scripture says, can take this cup away from me, then it immediately, same line, not my will, your will. Okay? Now, what was Christ really asking for? Think about it. Okay? He knows what he's going through. All right? He was asking for strength, wasn't he? Just asking for help. I got to get through this. How am I going to get through this? All right? His answer was to take the cup away from me, and then he says, but we can't do that. So did God answer the prayer? Sure he did. He sends an angel down to strengthen Christ. All right? And then we're going to see a different Christ, total different Christ from that picture. Because Christ gets up now after this picture. And Luke says, and Luke was a doctor, so he understood these things. He said that Christ's sweat came out like blood. That's a legitimate thing. It's called hematetrosis, the word. Hema in Greek is blood. Trosis is to sweat. You've heard the phrase sweating blood. That's where it comes from. So it's a legitimate thing. What happens is when fear takes over the body, like after an accident or whatever, your capillaries contract or lock up so that the blood doesn't flow to the brain, so that you pass out. And that's a life-saving thing for a while, where your doctors can come and help you. So and that's what it does. Now, you can overcome that. Your system can override that if you're scared enough. All right, if you have the strength behind it, and evidently Christ, did override it, so he didn't pass out, is what I'm saying. But the system was still acting, and so the blood was swelling. All right, and what it does, it rubs against the sweat glands, and it bursts, and out comes blood in your sweat. So it's a legitimate thing. Look it up. Hematetrosis. Okay, legitimate thing. As a matter of fact, everything I just told you, I got from 2 doctors, and it's in my notes that I wrote on it. So I love this picture. I just think it's such a touching moment there. Think about it on Holy Thursday, then when you're walking around with the cross, and think about this picture. Okay, so Christ did answer the prayer. There's the rock. Evelyn, you're here? There you go. There's a spot we were, Evelyn, right there, right? Evelyn and I were praying there. It's one of those neat buckling events. It's an amazing place. So that's the actual spot, and I can prove it. Let me see here. There you go. See? The actual spot where Christ prayed, and the angel came down and strengthened Christ. Okay, let's move on. All right, now we're going to go back and see. I'm going to take you through a sequence now. Christ is going to, he comes out of the garden and goes and sees the disciples asleep. And he says, guys, you couldn't stay away from me. Look, they're coming to get me now. And, overlooking the hill, he was on a hilltop now, and where the garden was, he could see the Roman soldiers coming for him, with Judas leading the way. And Judas, the soldiers, a lot of them were Roman guards. It was made up of some ragamuffin guys too, with clubs. They had some people with clubs and sticks, but there were soldiers there. And the head soldier says to Judas, he said, well, what's he look like? I mean, we've never seen him. They didn't have CNN and all this, but what's he look like? I don't know who this Christ is. And Judas says, well, I'll go up and kiss the person. It's the one I kiss. That's the one you arrest. So when Christ comes out and he sees him coming up, he goes up, Judas goes up to Christ, his master, and kisses him on the cheek. And there's another touching moment there. Christ says, I spent 3 years with you, teaching you. What did I teach you? Love, humility, and you hand me into the authorities with that act, an act of love. It would have been better if you had clubbed me rather than this approach, It really hurt Christ. And the soldiers, then he says to the soldiers, who have you come for? And they say, the Christ. And the soldiers, the scripture says, Matthew says, they step back when they see Christ. They say, oh my goodness, this is the man who just raised somebody from the dead. And so they were a little nervous about arresting him. But Christ says again, who have you come for? Firm conviction. And they say to Christ, he says, I told you, it's me. Take me. Leave these people go. They've done nothing. And so they arrest Christ. Does that sound like a man who was sweating blood 2 minutes ago? All right, there was strength there, conviction. He moved forward. God answered that prayer. So just remember that. When you get prayers that you think weren't answered, they probably were. You just didn't recognize the answer. All right, but sometimes the right answer is not the right thing for us. And that's what happened here. It wasn't the right answer for his son, but his son, he helped his son get through. So he did answer the prayer. All right, at this point, they take Christ to the high priest, the house of Caiaphas. So let's get our picture of Caiaphas back. There it is. He goes there. And now that push comes to shove, now they got to take some action. All right, they've been doing a lot of talking that they want to eliminate Christ. Now they got to get to it. And they are a little nervous because Palm Sunday now, where all these people were lined up waving palms, is where Christ was. I just realized I skipped one part here. I got to tell you about the palms. It's right here in front of me. I skipped it. Palms that they were waving, right? They were all lined up on that part of the that I showed you with the entryway out. The reason I'm showing you this is there's a history to this. Some of you older boys may recognize this. George?
Fan?
What's it called? Or what is it?
A fan? I don't know.
Yeah. The exotheria, the shield that you walk around with in the older boys, doesn't that look like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right? All right. Let's go back to the Egyptians. This goes back to the early Egyptians, and that's what I accidentally cut out on the slides, showing you everywhere you see on the Egyptians.
But
What's that? Very good. Okay. The Egyptians, you'll see things like this that are waving over the pharaohs and everything. And so palms became a sign of royalty. All right, well, they were used because remember, it's Egypt, it's a desert, it's hot, mosquitoes. So they would, go around, and that's what it became a sign of royalty. And if you look at the shields in church this week, look at those shields that the boys carry. They're called the exotheria. X is 6, epheteria are wings, because in the center is the seraphim angel, the 6-winged angel. And even if you look on the dome up top, you see them marching in procession. And they always are in the procession of Christ, of God, okay? So wherever the seraphim and the cherubic angels are, God's there. All right, they're the escort. That's why this all became a sign of
That, and then
Sorry. All right. Okay, so I didn't want to skip that because I think that's interesting. All right. So now they take Christ and they take him to the Antonio here, where Pilate is, or Caiaphas. We go to Caiaphas first. And he's nervous because he saw that he got reported that all these people were witnessing it and celebrating and waving palms and everything, saying, we want to arrest him and have him crucified, so we got to be careful. The Jews were known, they think back to the Judas Maccabee revolt, where they revolted against the things that were done against their faith by the Greek ruler Antiochus, who turned the temple into a monument of Roman gods. Okay. So that caused the revolt that's celebrated at Christmas, that the Jews celebrate as a Hanukkah, that the family of Judas Maccabee actually won. And so that's just why there's a concern from the government now even, and you're going to see it in Pilate. He's very concerned because he knows that the Jews, they've revolted already against the Roman legions. He was told, you got to be careful with these people. You can't just go around doing things against their religion. So he's trying to be very straight religiously. And Caiaphas is concerned too, because he's the young guy now that's replaced his father-in-law, and he wants to be careful. All right, so he's trying to get the Romans to try Christ and have him executed. And you're going to see that Pilate is trying the Jews to have him executed and tried. So right now they go to the house of Caiaphas, and Caiaphas questions him just a little bit, but then sends him to Pilate. Actually sends him to the Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin is the court, like the Supreme Court. Okay, so there's where he's being initially tried. You can see it. And at the top there is Annas. Now he's the respected leader. Okay, again, he was the high priest. His son is the high priest, but he's still the respected elder. And you can see them. He's, I don't know if you can see it. He's at the top there. I can't get it up. He's really at the top, sitting there. He's right at the top there. I don't know if you can see it. And he says the first thing, he says, are you the Christ, the Son of God? And Christ answers, you say that I am. Okay, it's the only thing he says. And he says very little this whole week. Father Andreas pointed that out really, a few times this week in his responses at the end of the services, that Christ said very little throughout all of this. He didn't challenge people or anything. He said, you said that I am. And Annas goes nuts and rips his clothing and sends him to Pilate. He said, let Pilate take care of you. So he goes, they take Christ to Pilate. Pilate questions him. And something happens here. His wife, Claudia, sends him a note. She was one of these visionaries. She had dreams and stuff, and they respected her visions because they all came true, sort of. So she sent him a note saying, have nothing to do with this man. He's a good man. Don't get involved in this one. So now he's got double pressure. He's got the government telling him to be careful, and he's got his wife, worse, he's got his wife telling him to be careful. Here's a new fact for you. She is the saint of our church, okay? Her name is Saint Procla, all right? And her name day is October 27th. Okay, you'll see a picture of her in a minute. We have an icon of her. But she became a saint of our church for defending Christ. So he tries everything to get Christ off the hook here. He even says, look, I don't want to do this to you. So I want to let you go. Give me a reason so I can let you go. Christ doesn't say anything, doesn't answer him. So after questioning everything, Pilate sends him to Herod Antipas. Now, you may know Herod Antipas. He's the one who will slay John the Baptist, or has slain John the Baptist at this point. He is the son of Herod the Great, one of the few ones that he didn't kill. Herod the Great killed almost his entire family, his wife and several of his children, on his deathbed, actually, because he was afraid they were going to take over his power. He was on his deathbed, dying. So he wasn't so great. Anyhow, he goes to Herod Antipas, and Herod's thrilled with him. Now, you can't tell from the icon there, but he's smiling, actually. And he's saying, oh, this is great. You're the one who does all these miracles. You walk on water and everything. He said, I have guests here today. Can you do something for us? Just do one of your miracles so we all can see. And Christ continues his approach by not saying a word, just stood there. And Herod said, do you know who I am? He said, yeah, I can let you go. Just do one miracle for me, and I'll let you go. And, Christ doesn't react to that. So Herod Antipas gets upset. He said, why do I have him? He said, this is a matter for Pontius Pilate. So he goes back to Pilate. Can you imagine? Remember, I showed you on the screen what we were talking about. I mean, he's walking back and forth from here to back to there now. This is the second time to Pilate. And Pilate is outside. I don't know if you can tell, but that picture shows him seated outside of the palace. And the reason he's outside is because the Passover is coming, and the Jews tell him, we can't go into your house. We can't defile our feet on the unsacred ground. So it's a nice thing to tell Pilate. So he says, okay, I'll come outside. So he goes outside, and he's presented with Christ. And he tries again to get Christ off the hook. And nothing happens. So then he gets this idea that maybe I can rough him up a little bit. And if I just, rough him up a little bit, maybe that'll be enough with him. And I'll let him go. So he sends him down to the Praetorium. There's St. Procla, October 27th. Okay. So he sends them down to the Praetorium. Okay, that's what you read in the Bible there. And there's the Greek word Praetorium on the left, Praetorium. And he is seated right here. This is not, I'm losing battery strength, I think. Right here, this bottom here, can you see it with the two holes, those on TV? Christ's legs were put in there. And if you can see the icon above it, you can see his feet are chained underneath. Okay? That's where they put him in jail there until the trial, which would have been the next day. Okay? Now, when the soldiers came around, they were ordered to rough him up a little bit. And the term used in the Bible is scourge. And that's important because it's different than a whipping. All right? Scourging is done to weaken the body. What they're trying to do is put you on a cross, and they want you on the cross for a month, if possible, even, so that people can see you and understand that this was a criminal. That's what they did in crucifixion. You die in crucifixion from suffocation. All right. If you hold your hands out, at some point you're going to find a tenseness here, and you're slowly suffocating. And we'll talk more about it in a second when I can show you a cross. But what they used, and I'm going to be fair to Father Steve. He challenges me on this one. Is that club there? It's called a flagrum, and you're free to look it up on in your history. Wikipedia has a good history on it and everything. Everything I've read says they used a flagrum because that was used for scourging. Because what they do, you see at the end of these pieces of the whips, those are balls, like metal balls, like stones. Right? And in the whipping, it would just bruise them. And that was the idea. They wanted to weaken the body, just bruise them. So it's 39 lashes or 36. I always forget. 36 lashes, 39. But what I'm going to show you later shows us that they had one soldier on each side of them. And one was even stronger than the other guy. And then each one took a turn. The one, and if it says 36 lashes, you got 3 straps on there at least, with how many balls on there that you can see? I can see 2 on them on each one. So that's 6 balls. That wasn't 36 lashes. That was a lot more if you counted the whole effect of it. It was brutal. But that's the right position, according to what I'm going to show you later. And okay, that piece that I've superimposed there is the actual piece in Constantinople, in our patriarchy. They actually have that there, okay? It's only right to the right of the iconostasio, and that's the actual slab that the pillar that Christ leaned over. It's one of the holy relics that our church has in Constantinople. Note the crown of thorns. People talk about rose bush thorns, which are like this. You can see that those were 1.5 inches, those thorns. The idea was to pierce the skulls. It meant to pierce the head, not ornament it. So that actual one is in Notre Dame. And it was one of the few things that didn't get burnt down. They had it in Notre Dame. They were able to salvage it. They pulled it out of that fire. And that's a very sacred rock. Okay, that's the case it is in Notre Dame. The day I was there, it wasn't there, of course. They had it away. So now, the beat up Christ goes for a 3rd time. Pilate takes him out. And he takes him up to the people. He says, well, I'm going to let the people decide. I wash my hands of this. It's the famous line that's mentioned in the scriptures. He is not going to be the one that condemns Christ. Okay? He does not want to cause trouble there. So he said, look at him. I beat him up for you. He said, do you really want to do worse to him? Let him go. He said, you always let somebody go at this holiday or Passover. You got your choice. Well, let him go or you let this criminal go. This guy's a definite criminal. Barabbas. Okay. And he was a definite criminal. So he tried everything, Pilate, and Pilate was ruthless. His history there is not as nice as I'm making it out to be here. He was ruthless. He did some really terrible crimes with the people and everything. He would kill anybody at the drop of a hat. And the people say, if he's the Son of God, let him come down here and let him be free. But we see that phrase from the Mount of Temptation, where Satan said, where I said he left for a while. And Satan said, if you're the Son of God, turn this bread, and you're going to see it when he's on the cross. You're going to say, if you're the Son of God, come down from there. These are the same people that were waving these palms 5 days, 6 days earlier, waving palms and calling him the King of Kings and everything. Now they want to execute him. They all holler, crucify him, let Barabbas go. So Pilate gives up, all right, and he sends him to crucifixion. Now, like I said, I think my battery is weak here. It's not even showing.
That's a nicer pointer, remember?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Thank you. I got confused here. Technology here is incredible. I'll tell you. There it is. Okay, right there. See that thing there? That's the torture device. Okay, that little slab at the bottom of the cross is the actual torture device. When you're being crucified, okay, what would happen is you would push up on your toes, right, so that the blood, flows down. So like your body would go above your arms, and the blood will flow down and relieve you. And you keep going up, and when your chest starts to contract at this point, and you can't go any higher, they would come and break your legs, your thigh bone, and you would collapse, and you would suffocate. See? So I tell you, it was a terrible, terrible torture. There's this picture just shows the beam at the top. There's thoughts that Christ carried the beam that he was put on. Because, look at that lumber. It's got to hold, 250-pound people up in the air for a month. All right? It had to be heavy timber. And the two pieces are estimated, that we know what kind of wood it was. They estimated that it probably weighed about 300 pounds, the actual cross, which a beaten up man like Christ was, would have been difficult carrying. That's why he collapsed a couple of times when he was trying to carry it. So it could be that he just carried the one beam, or God can do anything. He could have carried the whole thing. One thing I want to go over, though, that's interesting, I think, there's there's your nails. They call them nails. Those are like spears. I mean, they were this big. Not your little nails that you see the carpenters banging. I mean, it was, the question was, could a nail going through the palm here suspend somebody in the air, for that long of a period? Now, this shows him that his hands were tied, but he was still suspended. And the way around that would have been to put the nail through the two bones here. All right, and that's what that, I think, is showing. Okay, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit in the second half. Either way, it was terrible. Another thing, to stand it up and hold the person up, you had to dig it 3-4 feet into the ground. So, I mean, it had to be big. It had to be a lot of wood. 300 pounds is probably a good estimate. All right, this is actually Calvary, and this is actually the cave where Christ was buried. All right, it's a church. It's the Church of the Resurrection. Helena, Constantine the Great's mother, built the first church at the spot of the grave. And she built it over Calvary and over, they made it big enough that it was over Calvary. I'll show you. There you go. See? Here, right here is the crucifixion. There's Calvary right there. And here's the cave. Right? The tomb, in other words. There's another picture. There's Calvary. There's the tomb. So the church is all on top of all that. Now, I've been there several times. And to get to this part, you got to go up several stairs. Okay, and I'll show you pictures of the spot in a minute. But so it is up because it was up on a hill. All right, so it's in the upper level. And to go to this part here, the cave, that's down. All right, it's in what they call the edifice. And we'll look at that in a minute too. There's just another picture. See, it goes down into the cave. And of course, the Calvary was up top. Calvary was actually known as the burial spot for Adam. Okay, and when you see icons of it, of the crucifixion, if you look at the bottom, there's a black space there, and you'll see a skull there. Almost all of the icons have that, and that skull was the skull of Adam. Okay, so traditionally, the Jews maintained Calvary was the spot where Adam was traditionally buried. Yeah. I don't know if his bones, what they did with his bones or whatever, but I'm just reporting history here. That's what they say. And Christ, the symbolism is Christ is the new Adam. See? There's your tie-in again to the Old Testament. Right? Christ is the new Adam. He's the one who's going to take care of our sins. Adam was the one who was supposed to spread the religion, develop the world, but he sinned, right? Which opened the door to send Christ down. Now Christ is replacing Adam. He's the new Adam, the one that's going to lead us out into the promised area. Okay? We okay here? We understand where that is, and that's right here in this map here. Okay, and in your maps there, it's the open space. Okay, at the top. Okay, all right. Now we're going to take you into the tomb. Here's the front entry of the tomb. Let me go one more picture. We'll come back to this in a minute. We'll go two more pictures. There it is. That was the first thing built over the tomb. All right. The tomb belonged to Joseph of Arimathea. Joseph of Arimathea was one of the Sanhedrin members. Joseph and Nicodemus are the ones that took Christ down from the cross and prepared him for burial. Okay. Now, when they took him down from the cross to prepare him for burial, let me go back now. They put him on that slab right there. And those of you who I've given the bracelet to, that's the slab I had it blessed on. Okay, right there, and that's a. You see people. He has a prayer rope and he's blessing it on there. They have icons. I had a ton of icons I took with me and I had them blessed on there. It's a very neat welcome event to go in there and just there's the slab they prepared Christ for burial on. I couldn't believe it. And in here, there's two levels, not levels, but entries in here. This is the first entry, like a narthex. And then you go in a little deeper, and you have this in there. That is where they laid Christ to rest, the actual spot. And my wife and I got a private time in there that we would just pray together right there. It's just amazing. I hope you all can go on a trip with us next time. We're going to go to all these spots that I'm showing you. Just an amazing thing here. Because we went with our bishop can open doors that you just wouldn't believe. And we got royal treatment here. This is just a magnificent thing that we saw there. So, okay, all of that isn't housed by, well, let's go here. Oh, there you go. There you go. See the dark? See the skull there? Yeah, I thought I had an icon. There it is. That's Adam's skull right there. Now notice, there's not that many people there. You have the soldier here whose name was Longinus. Longinus became a saint. He's the one that thrust the spear into the side of Christ. He became a saint. He's the one that says, surely this must be the Son of God. He made a very famous statement there. And he converted many people, many soldiers to Christianity. And he was martyred, and he's a saint of our church. This is probably John, the only disciple that was there, the one that he said Christ loved him the most. He was there at the crucifixion. The others were hiding, and he got, here's your quiz question. If anybody asks you, what were the names of the women at the tomb, at the crucifixion? Just say Mary. They all were named Mary, all three of them. You got Mary Magdalene, you got Mary Theotokos, and Mary, the family of Salome. So they're all Marys there. There's a fourth one there. You can see her head there, and that is Salome. Okay, so if you're really sharp, you'll say Mary and Salome to be 100% accurate. All right, this is the spot where Christ was crucified, right there, right there. Okay, there's an altar, a table here, marble, and what we do is you go and you venerate. You get on your knees here, and there's a hole here where the cross went down the ground. All right, this was put into stone, the hole itself, because it had to hold the cross, and you put your hand down there. Okay, it's just an amazing thing. So that's what you're seeing here, and this is the actual rock right next to the cross. The cross was here, and that's right next to it. So we're getting you as close as you can right now to the crucifixion spot. So you can just remember this during the week as we go through the Holy Week. And again, there's now the interesting thing here is that only Orthodox are allowed into that entryway that I showed you, which is right here in the front. So all these people lined up are Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox. Even the Pope can't go into the front part because it's an altar. It's the original altar. Everything else is a replica of that one. So, a Catholic priest cannot go into our altar and do a service. So it's the same thing here. That's the church. That's the first church for us. And this is the one that Helen built. And this is the one National Geographic did a thing on where they revised it all, okay? And rebuilt it, strengthened it, because, it's 2,000 years old. It's old. Now, the Albanians have an entryway in the back here. See that canopy? There's an opening there, and they're permitted to go in the back. They don't get to the part where Christ was, but they have their own altar there. The Catholic altar is over here on the side, several feet away from here, way down, let's say, back here. And that's where the Pope goes when he goes to Jerusalem. And you'll see those different nationalities have spots that they've given, because that's the Church of all nations, basically, and they allow that. And it creates some friction sometimes between a couple faiths. When we were there, I think we were Armenians, we were doing a prayer, and our bishop was doing a prayer at the tomb of the Virgin Mary, the Theotokos. He was chanting the hymn of the Theotokos, and they got very upset because they thought it was interfering with their service. So it's a very touchy part. Okay, who is Secunda Pia? All right, boy, I'm right on time too. Do you need a break? 2-minute break? Are you okay? Can we go on? Good. Who is Secunda Pia? Nobody knows that, right? Good. I didn't know it, so I looked it up. Secunda Pia is a photographer. Okay, so from here on, I'm going to talk about things that I've researched, and I can document everything that I say. Okay, and those who have picked up the papers, you have documentation of what I'm saying. This is the part that I'm going to show you some things from the Shroud, okay? Father Steve and I, are big supporters of the Shroud. We believe there's enough evidence, and I know that they did carbon testing, but I will show you some of the fallacy of carbon testing. And I'm going to show you some proof here. But again, I'm not trying to really prove the authenticity of it. It's an illustration of what Christ went through, because there's nothing better than that. Okay, there's Secundo Pia. Now you know who he is. Good looking guy. All right. And he was a photographer. Here's his camera. Come on up. There it is. He didn't have an iPhone. Look at that thing. Imagine loading that thing around. That's his camera. So he was commissioned to take a picture of this garment that they found that has gone through history. There's a reported link in history on it. It was seen by the Crusaders in Constantinople. They say somebody wrote that he had seen something. I'm going to show you what we think he had seen. But here's where you got to put your thinking caps on with me. Let's say this is a shroud. Forget the green in here. I couldn't find a white one in the kitchen. I just grabbed this. So here you've got the body of Christ that was prepared for burial, okay, quickly, because I showed you the distance, right? I did fail to go over the part where Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus go to Pilate, all right, Pilate's over here. All right, they're at Calvary over here. So they go all the way over here and say, we would like to take him down and bury him. We want to bury him before the Passover. Passover's tomorrow. In the church, even in our church, in the Jewish faith, 5:30 was the end of the day. 5:30 began the next day. The service tonight is the Monday service. What we're going to celebrate tonight is the Monday service. Okay? And Thursday, you could ask, I just showed you when the trial was. It was on Friday. All right, but we celebrate Thursday, the crucifixion. Right? He walks around with the cross. No, it's because the service really is the service of Friday. All right? And that goes back to the authenticity of the calendar. Okay? So Christ now has all these oils, and there was no time to properly bury him. If they were going to bury him properly, they would have wrapped him with linens. As you saw, Lazarus was wrapped with linen. That's how they did it then. That's how the Jews buried people. So they didn't have time for that. Let's say we feel that Christ expired at 3 p.m. He was on there 6 hours, 9 until 3. For him to run, he's an old man, to go to this point, and Pilate said, well, he can't be dead. I just put him up. So he sends a soldier out to verify that he's dead. So the soldier's got to run all the way back up here to Calvary and see that he's dead. And Longinus is going to prove he's dead by thrusting the spear. That's why they did that, to prove he was dead. Because Pilate wanted the proof. So now the guy runs all the way back, and yep, he's dead. I can verify. Longinus put a spear in him. He's dead. Pilate agrees to Arimathea, Joseph of Arimathea, go ahead, take him down and bury him. And he owned that cave that we just looked at. That was his cave. He owned that property. So that's why he had him brought down. Now you saw those spikes, and these are old guys. And John didn't have the strength. And it must have taken something to get the spikes out, all right, from the wrist. And he even had a spike in his legs. His legs were put on one on top of the other. And the spike was put into those. So there's a lot of nails in Christ at this time. So they're pulling them out to try to get them done by 5:30. It's got to be 4:45 at this point, or 5 o'clock, with all the running around that they're doing. And they take him down to the cave, and they lay him on that slab. And they put Mary Magdalene comes and puts something on him, and they prepare him as best they can. But she says, look, I'll come back Sunday and finish the job after Passover. So let's just put him in the tomb now and just cover him. So they cover him like this, okay? They don't wrap them. So they just put them on the shroud, and then just fold it over, and then tied it. There's 2 straps, they tied it. And the book of John tells us very clearly there were 2 garments, okay? One was this, and there was a smaller one, and that fits the Jewish concept of how they would bury people. They would put one, like with Christ being tortured. They didn't like the death agony of the face. So they would take something this size, whatever, and put it over the head. All right, so that the agony wouldn't show. All right, and if you read the scripture, it says it was folded. Both of the garments are folded, and on either side of the slab that I showed you, that's where they rested. So there were two garments. All right, and now let's just take this garment now. This is nice and white, right? Okay, so now somebody with oil, sweat, blood, all right? What would it do to the shroud? Stain it, thank you. You know, I answer the question every year. You're the first person to answer it. No, even the kids don't even get it. Yeah, even George didn't answer it. I ask everybody. Nobody, that's the word I'm looking for. It stains it. See, somebody who washed clothes, right? Stains it. Does that make sense? And what would happen to places like the eyes? That's right, nothing. Nothing. So the eyes would be what's dark, okay? Right, my eyes are dark, right? You see dark would be light on here, right? And the nose and the cheeks, the forehead, where all the oil is and everything would be dark on here, okay? Actually, what that's doing is it made a negative, right? The reverse. It's the reverse. This is light, now it's dark. This is dark, now it's light. That's what a negative is, isn't it? So Secunda Pia takes a picture of this, and now he's developing it in his studio, and look what he sees. Be patient. No 5-minute stretch, no time. Show him what you saw. Come on. A life form, so you have a photograph of whoever was in that crowd. And now comes the interesting parts is to identify things on it, like white, which is blood. All right, the white here now, when you see white like that, like you see this, it's called the inverted 3. See that part there? Brian, can they see the pointer?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry, in the forehead, folks, there on TV, there's the 3 right in the middle, called the inverted 3. Everywhere you see light colors, like on the forehead or to the left and to the right, those are blood stains. So whoever this is, he had blood at the top here. When I show you the back, you'll see blood back here. Okay? The hair is matted. Right? Now, and I think it's in the things, the handouts I gave you. I don't recall if I have a slide on it. But would you have any trouble recognizing an icon of Christ? Not at all, right? But there's no description of Christ anywhere in the scriptures. It never mentions anything about Christ. I mean, just like Peter and James and John. I mean, you have to look at the name to see which one it is 9 times out of 10, all right? You can't figure it out. But here's no description anywhere. There's a letter that they found that was written by a Roman legion, but the authenticity can't be proven, so nobody refers to it. But, I mean, do you see the features of Christ on here? Like the matted hair? You look at the icons of Christ, the hair is flat. It's not curly like John the Baptist and Peter and James. Paul's bald-headed. But, I mean, their hair, his hair is flat from the sweat and the blood. You see, it's matted. All right? And every icon shows that. And a lot of historians say that the icons, took the image as for their word for the of Christ. All right? So there's blood there, there's blood there, there's blood there. Okay. Let's move on. The image of Christ was found at the city gate of Edessa in 544. That could have been, what they did with the shroud is they folded it into quarters like this. All right? So the image of Christ could have been on here. More than likely, it was the other linen, the other garment that I told you about. We're going to talk about that one in a second. I'm going to blow your mind away when I get to that. All right, it was given to the patriarch in Constantinople. There's a date in 1204. This is the big time. 1204 was taken by French soldiers named Othon de la Roche. and displayed somewhere in the cathedral in 1207. Cathedral destroyed by fire, and that's what you're going to see the stains of the fire in the garment. The same year, Geoffrey de Charnay. Does anybody know who he is? Yes, you do. He was the head of the Templar Knights. He's the one that started the Templar Knights. And he was killed. He was executed. The Pope executed him at one point. But he's the one that started all that, the Templar Knight legions. He had the garment, the shroud garment, and he gave it to, he married into this family, the Roche family, and the shroud was in their church in Liray, France. And then it was given to Turin, and that's where it resided, in Turin, Italy. So there's a track record for it, historical track record. It just doesn't, they can't find it, or they up until now, they didn't have a claim to it coming from Christ. All right, there's the actual garment. It is huge. All right, it's not a little thing. It's not like this little cloth. I mean, I'm trying to get it. I can get a copy of that. I'm thinking maybe next year get that. That would be my new one thing for next year. And I'll put it out here. It would stretch out from this side to that side. It's huge. Okay, now, look at some interesting things I want to show you now. Look at the hands here. Can you see the fingers? You can almost see the fingers. If you're up close, you with the pictures. Now you can pull the pictures out. You have this picture in there. And you can see the fingers, can you not? Can you see the fingers? You can see the fingers there. All right, look where the blood is. Now it's the reverse, folks, right? We're in the reverse. We're in the negative now. That's it. So blood is now dark. All right, we're in the reverse now. Look where the blood is on the hand. Where is it? Is it in the palm? No, it's on the wrist. The Greek word for is hieri in the Bible. This was written in Greek, and the Greek word is hieri. And the hieri is this part of the body. Okay? It's not the palm. It's the whole thing. So it's just an interpretation aspect, you know. But you can see very clearly the blood is right there. Look how clear this is. I mean, it's actual negative. And look closely, you see dot marks like throughout, right? Can you see the impressions? All right, that's the whip marks. That's the flagrum. You see the stones on there. Like I say, Father has challenged me on this. I'm still researching it more, that the flagrum didn't come around until the 6th century. So in fairness to him, I'm saying that he feels it wasn't the flagrum, but everything I read says that was the device they used to whip him, whip Christ. So you can see on there, the flagrum, the impressions, not only across the body, all the way down to the legs, all the way down, everywhere on the body, every aspect of it. There are the watermarks that I was telling you about from the fire. When you put the fire out, you see how it's folded over. You can see how this is replicated, right? So they folded this over. So this whole part was 1/4 of it. It's facing. This is the back side. There's a bruise over here. Okay, and there's a bruise here on this side. So something like the wood, the lumber carrying the cross, right, on his back. Okay, so you can see that. And look over here. What do you see there? See it? On the left side, folks, on TV, on the far left, right by the watermark there, you see that big black splodge? What's a splodge? It's that's the spear. So right there, the scientists have said blood and water. I'm giving you these facts from a group that you can look up on the internet. It's called the Sturp Report, STURP, Sturp Reports. This Shroud of Turin report. You can look it up and you can get the whole report. It's fascinating. All right, their conclusions, and I'm going to tell you their conclusions. I'll save you some time. But they explain all this on there. Now, another interesting thing, right down here in the hand, if you look carefully, you can only see 4 fingers. And that is absolutely accurate to authenticity, because the spike would have made the thumb contract. So you only see 4 fingers. Now, if this were a replica back in the 4th and 5th century, do you think they had that kind of knowledge to do something like this? The Sturp Report concluded without a doubt. Okay, they did it with the scientific machines now, with the DNA stuff, which they can do now. start report is over 10 years, so maybe they didn't have DNA, but they certainly could tell blood from paint. Okay, and they say that is real blood. It is not a painting. Okay, absolutely. It's actually, they've even measured the depth of it, 3D. They had machines that could measure, and they said this is a three-dimensional presentation here. This is real. And if it's not Christ, then someone else died the same way as this Christ did. Okay, that was their conclusion. And I'm going to give you a couple more of their conclusions at the end here. So I think I've covered everything here. These are burn marks. The black marks throughout are burn marks. Those on the TV, I can't show you. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. See them? And right above it are white marks. Those are the water marks from the fire that I mentioned. Okay, I hope you can see all this. And the one thing and look behind the head here. See, there's more blood. See it? On the right side is the back, and the left side is the front. If you look on the right side at the head, you'll see dark spots. That's blood from the Crown of Thorns. All right. Let me move on here now. I can't believe I'm on time. I've never been on time. All right. Now here's the negative of it. Remember, what we looked at was the actual negative. Now you're looking at the photograph. The negative of the negative. It's a positive, right? So there it is. Now the blood is white. And there it is. See on the wrist there, you can see the white spots. You see white spots here and the back of the head. One thing I'm trying to show you, I got to find it. No bone was broken, by the way. This proves that, this asserts that no bone was broken. And that is from the Old Testament, the prophecies that no broken shall be broken. And that's why Longinus did the spear. I mean, he didn't know the prophecy, but the spear, the guy was going to break Christ's legs. They were going to come to break Christ's legs so he would suffocate. And Longinus wouldn't allow it. And he thrust the spear, and that fit the prophecy that no bone was broken. Let me move on here. Got some more interesting things here. All right. I think this is the spear. Yeah, this is the spear. It is really a sword. All right. And it shows it right there. Okay, the blood coming out and that goes in there. That's the right cut, right width of it that would make a cut there. And it shows the spear. Somebody said, well, the spear's on the other side. I said, yeah, because that's the negative, what we're looking at. It's the reverse. It's the wrong side. It's the opposite. So that's the crucifixion there. That's the correct side. All right, let's go. Oh, there you go. That's what I was talking about. They actually superimposed the shroud. You can see at the bottom right picture, they superimposed the shroud on this icon, which is at St. Catherine's Church. Those of you who were with us at the trip to St. Catherine's saw this icon. It's called I forgot the name, the Merciful Sufferer. The Merciful Sufferer. Because one side, if you hold a cardboard here, one side of Christ is smiling and the other side is suffering. You see it in the eyes. But look at the hair. Look at matted, right? And look over here. What do you see? Right there. You see it? The little strips of hair on the left picture of the icon, folks on TV. You see little strands of hair. Just strands of cameras here. That's what strands of hair here. All right? Like the inverted 3. Right? The inverted 3. There it is right there. And the hair is matted. Like I said, they superimposed it, the shroud features right on. It's a perfect fit. Yeah, you can really see that in the pictures that I gave you. Okay, moving along. There it is. That's just the reverse, showing an artist's rendition of the photograph. National Geographic did a show on this. You can get it on TV, I'm sure. They sell it. It's great. Where they actually take the features that are described in the shroud and make a composite of it, of an actual photo of how they interpret it. And I have something similar to it over there. You can take a look. When you go over, there's a picture there. If you look, it's one of those. What do you call it?
Like 3D
changes. Yeah, changes. That's a name. I forget. But it's over there. And that's what this is showing. All right. Now, let's talk about the carbon testing they did, which dated it to the 14th century, time of the Crusaders. They took 3 postage stamp sizes pieces from this. They took it from the outside portion that was hanging since the 14th century. All right, this is what they took. And they were afraid to go inside the garment to take it open. They didn't want to destroy it. Well, that piece, first of all, is the one that was exposed. All right, the inside part was not exposed, as well as this was hanging there. Plus the fact that there's actual proof now they found in their stirrup report that there was actual stitching done, that they replaced the piece here at the end, that they took this carbon testing up. The carbon testing, was not valid for the whole garment. All right, there's too much conflict on it. All right, let's see here. The image of the man was 5'10", weighed about 180 pounds. All the details on the shroud are exactly as covered by the Gospels or historical fact. All the physical findings are scientifically correct, proven, except for the following. Scientists state the body never left the shroud. Why do you think that? Why would they say that? Well, you got the report, you can read it, but we're going to prove it to you right now. Remember, the body's wrapped, right? Okay, take the shroud off. What would have happened here?
It would have.
Yes, smeared,
Stuff was
right?
smeared, yeah.
Big time. Do those pictures look like they were smeared? One of the scientists in the Scriptural report actually said that the only explanation is the resurrection. He said they couldn't come to an explanation of how that happened. I mean, if you have a Band-Aid on a thing here, what happens when you take it off? So, all right, now there's a couple things I want to cover. There's the stitching. I did have it here. The guy's name was Ray Rogers. Ray Rogers was on the stirrup committee, was the biggest antagonist on the committee. He just would not buy that it was the burial cloth of Christ. And he died, and on his deathbed, he issued a statement to his wife, and he said, "Tell the people that it's legitimate." He's the one that found the stitching issue. Easy name to look up. Look it up on your internet. Get some square on it. Remember Roy Rogers? Just Ray Rogers. Okay, and there's the pieces that were shown cut. All right, now, Simon Peter came following him. They went into the tomb and saw the linen cloths lying there, and the handkerchief that had been around his head, not lying with the linen cloth, but folded together in a safe place. There it is. Now, you saw that slab. I showed you that slab when we were in the Church of the Resurrection, where I said we prayed. Not the slab outside where they prepared Christ. And you see 2 garments there. And getting near the end here. Okay, I'll talk about this now. The Sodarion de Avioda. This is going to blow your mind. All right, there it is. Sodarion is a handkerchief. Sodarion de Oviedo. That's a city in Spain. Not Sodarion de Oviedo. This is reported to be the head covering, the second garment. Okay, and let's see here. Let me bring this. This one has an image of Christ, I think. Yeah, there it is. That is what they did, was they superimposed the image on the shroud on this, and it lines up perfectly. All right, the one on the right, in the red, is the head covering that we're just talking about. This is the shroud, and it matches perfectly with the bleeding and the marks and everything. Now, before you got here, I was reading my notes. I usually go to my notes, and I found this thing that I printed for you about that new article that actually was written in the Charlotte Observer in April 17th, 1997. And it's a professor from Durham at Duke University that we're talking about who had this. It's hard to read a little bit, but you can get the gist of it. They found pollen okay, in the shroud that it was indigenous with, from the area of Jerusalem, okay? And they dated the pollen back to the time of Christ. They know that this flower existed back then. This doctor, this professor, noticed on the shroud, I don't see it. I've tried to study it. Maybe you'll see it when you look at it. Images of flowers around the head. That would have been, when you think that would have been how they buried them, probably put flowers around it, right? We've got flowers in our church all over the place now. So he could see it stained in the cloth. And so he studied it. Sure enough, his findings were that it was flowers. And those flowers were proven to come only from the area of Jerusalem. Okay? And they were the same markings, same floral markings and pollen on the shroud and the head covering. The same one. And this is my favorite one here. See, I think I have it written here somewhere. Let's see. The blood type on the Shroud of Turin is AB, in case you're interested. And the blood type on the Sedarion is AB. All right, blood stains AB are on both the same item. It's got the pollen, got everything. Okay, see, give you an idea of the head covering, how they do it. And that's where it is. That's the church. D-O-V-O-K. I don't know how to pronounce it. Okay, now here's the last thing. I got to make a disclaimer first. We got time. I got to ask you a favor, okay? And I ask this in all humility. Not that I anticipate something. I ask you please, but it just seems that every time I end here, people applaud. And I would ask you not to, if you would do that for me. It's not my material. I'm just presenting you what's out there. And so please, I feel guilty taking applause on a burial person. Okay. So the fact that you're here is all that to make me happy. I mean, it makes me happy. So, okay. So let's finish this now. All right. Jesus cried out again in a loud voice. What's wrong with that statement? It's in the Bible. But it doesn't make sense. What did we talk about crucifixion? How do you die in crucifixion? Suffocation. Out of air. How could he scream out in a loud voice? It's mentioned twice. Loud voice. Without air. All right? So he didn't die from suffocation. We know that now. All right? John tells us that. And then the next line, he yielded up his spirit. That's the one question I get. Well, how did he die then? Well, he says it. He says those very words. There's the scriptural reference. He yielded his spirit. He's God. He can do anything. He yielded his life up. He willed his own death, knowing that he's coming back on Sunday. So that's covered very well in the New Testament. All right? And with that, I think at the final moments, and the crowd hollering up there, the final moments, if you are the Son of God, come down from there, down from the cross. There's Satan doing his work. He came back at the very end. And there's the resurrection. So I hope this helps with your ministry this week, going through Holy Week, as we go over each day and you can think of these things. Think of the pictures and everything. Put yourself there. Get you in the mood. I can't thank you enough for coming, because when I get a crowd this size, then it encourages me to do it again next year. I don't want to stop doing it. Presentation, it gets me something. It gets me every year. So thank you so much. Thank you. You can go to church now if you cares to. It'll start at 7.